If you're listening to this, you've probably been on a road with many lanes, multi-lane highway, and you've probably been places where there's a strong signal, Wi-Fi. There are places where roads narrow such that only one way is possible. If you run into another car, you'll have to back up. There are places where you go and the road becomes gravel, or there's no road at all. And I'm thinking today about Hexagram 41, decreasing. And what we're seeing when we are on such roads or we're losing the Wi-Fi is a decreasing. And often there's a story, and often there's an apparent reality that there is a decrease, there's a loss of some kind. It's best to be avoided or gotten out of as quickly as possible. But when you're on a narrow road in the middle of nature, you're in a place where Wi-Fi doesn't reach, it's a mystery. You don't really know what's going to be around the next bend, assuming it's a windy single road. You don't know if you're going to run into another vehicle going fast or going in such a way that you have to back up because there's nowhere to turn around. And so I relate all this Hexagram 41 and the idea of the positive side of decrease. If you set aside your will, set aside your personal will, you set aside your memories of who you are and what your objectives are, it's a decrease. I'm not saying it's all good or all bad. We tend to think of it as only bad. But I've had a moment where I forgot who I was. I woke up, I didn't know who I was. And it only lasted for a few seconds, and I was physically comfortable, I wasn't hungry, there was sun shining. So my response was utter peace. I knew that I was probably going to remember who I was, all my responsibilities and missions and objectives and flaws would come back. But in that moment, I just felt happy. So for me, my connotation with these mysteries and these windy roads of not knowing where you are and not knowing who you are can be positive because of that experience. I'm not saying it's always positive. Certainly dementia has shown us that for a lot of people it's not positive. But I just want to put it out there with Hexagram 41, it's not always a bad thing.
The Hanged Man ordinarily is associated with the distinction between community and individual, relating to shaman who go on journeys or ordeals in order to bring back something to the tribe, very much reminiscent of Call, Trial, Return, and Dodo. But there's another way to think about the Hanged Man, because what the practice was to hang upside down. The blood goes to your head and you might see visions or have some insights. And we have the most classic image of Odin and Thor with respect to the removed eye and the inverted body, both relating to seeing more of reality. And this is the challenge, I think, that comes from entheogens and retreats and being around gurus and Shaktipat, is that for whatever mechanism, which is mysterious, we can access a higher state, another state in those contexts, even breath work. They can be very powerful, but are they in a sense of form of impatience? Is the Hanged Man impatient? Impatient to find something that is inevitable, is coming, but the suffering is so great that the desire is for it to happen now. And we can relate that too to a hanging man when someone is journey to death is accelerated due to the community hanging them, right? The mob hanging them, or them hanging themselves, due to an unwillingness to hear the internal negative voice or autoerotic. And so this idea of hanging, being suspended, in a sense we're all suspended, we're all hanging, but can we be okay in that state of falling but not falling, right? Because when you're hanging, gravity wants to pull you down, and there's a little rope tied around whatever part, ankle or neck, saying, no, we're going to stay up. And it's that tension, it's that pulling that can be painful, can cause a break of the neck or the ankle, as there's an attempt to create an equilibrium that maybe the earth will win and you'll fall, the rope will break, the ankle will break, the neck will break, or that the suspension will continue. What often leads us to this idea of decrease, and you can relate it to the hanged man, is this sense of loss and disappointment. There can be a disappointment with other people, with society in general, with yourself, with the way events have gone, with the way things seem to be going. And in our modern society, often we want to suppress, distract ourselves, or fix when we have those feelings. We just don't seem to have the cultural support for being with disappointment and loss. But what if that's the gateway? What if, as Aurelius says, the obstacle is the way? If we go into that feeling of loss, the thoughts that things should be different, or things are going to change in a way I don't like, or why didn't I do something different? And when you're on a narrow road, when your options are squeezed, when you've lost your Wi-Fi connection, these are just metaphors, but actual realities too, then that feeling of disappointment and loss, regret, can be stronger because there's literally no other way to go. On a one-lane highway or a short path, mountain pass, is really just forward and backward. And backward, depending on what's behind you, may or may not be an option. And at times you might see a fork in the road, but maybe there's a sign that says you can't go that way. Be with the loss, be with the disappointment, be with the regret. It's generally believed, and maybe true, that arrogance is bad and humility is good. It's generally believed to be true that being stuck on a life path, career, relationship, that's not bringing out your gifts and not bringing you joy is bad, and finding a way to make your dreams come true, relationship-wise and career-wise, is good. But what's interesting is that if you apply humility to all of those binaries, those two binaries, then we're humble enough to say that pure humility, that any young force may not be optimal. We know that pure arrogance is problematic. It's unconscious, comes from fear, acts out through the enneagram, a desire to be seen well, a desire to have certainty and remove fear, or a way to process anger and sensory overwhelm. And I was speaking about the heart types in the enneagram, the head types in the enneagram, the gut types. So, the mind will fantasize about how you're going to rise to greatness. The story of redemption. And we see it in capitalism, we see it in religion, spiritual circles too. But with humility, then we say, well, maybe not living up to my potential is ideal. Maybe having a job and a relationship status which is unsatisfactory is ideal. And how could we possibly say that? How could that loss, or that regret, or that disappointment be a good thing? And with humility, we don't answer that question, but with just a little bit of arrogance, we could wonder if from that pain, loss, disappointment, regret, comes compassion. I think instead of trying to figure out when this is going to be over, or where's the light at the end of the tunnel, or when do I stop having to go uphill, or when do things go my way, or when does someone throw me a bone, or when do I see the way I want to be seen, or when do I get to feel good about what I'm doing. It's totally natural to have those desires and ask those questions, but there's an opportunity, perhaps, in staying with the unwanted state, the thoughts and the feelings that are just not happy about things, and the thoughts and feelings that are expressing concern over the past or future.
I didn't plan to speak so much about the hangman, but I'm thinking about the similarities and differences between the hanged man and the hermit. The hermit traditionally is often thought about as withdrawing from the social sphere, whereas the hanged man is often thought about as the shaman who exits the social sphere to bring something back, to return with the prize. Again, return in this context is the more general Jungian hero's journey of return, but we use it meaning a return to Sparta. In any case, the hermit has one object in his card, which is the lamp, the light, showing him truth, showing him the way. And for the hangman, the object I would suggest is the place where the foot or ankle is tied to the branch. And there's a stretching happening there. I say stretching, light is moving out, not stretch, but just moving, unlike the gravitational force, which is stretching or pulling. But still, you have these 2 points of interest, the figure, male figure, and then the point of interest, which is a movement outward. So, with the hangman and the hermit, we might be thinking about this question of who am I, and who are other people, and what's my relationship to them. And on a deeper level, the idea that it's all fake. In other words, people are fake. When you're talking to people, you're just talking to their ego. You're talking to their negative adaptive child, negative free child, negative controlling parent, negative adaptive parent, negative nurturing parent, or maybe positive adaptive child, positive free child, positive controlling parent, positive nurturing parent, or even the ideal parent figure, both in terms of your communication with others and yourself. These are all artificial. They're not actually who you are. They're just structures that are constructing language, either internally or externally. So who you are, as we've said before, is pure awareness, ineffable, formless, infinite, no content, just the container. And at a certain point, if you're relating to people and especially if you're versed in the enneagram, it might become difficult to engage with people because you just see that they, possibly like you, are living in delusion, believing that the voice that's speaking inside and outside is actually them. How do you relate to people if you truly know that you're not the internal voice, know that you're not the external voice, and know that they're not the internal external voice? Well, you'd be enlightened, and therefore you'd be coming at them most likely with compassion. Not everyone who's enlightened seems to have compassion, so we can't say the 2 things are always synonymous. But in any case, that idea of just being present for someone as they're trying to put out an image or get some kind of reaction from you, or try to protect themselves from your image or from what you may be putting out to them. So the hanged man may be hanging in order to, in a shamanic way, to escape the confines of identity. The idea that the world is ground up, sky down. That the world is ground down, sky up. And so, similar to Hexagram 11, if you're upside down, then you see that the sky is down and the ground is up. That inverted view. But often what can interfere with the hanged man's journey is this need to return as the hero to bring the bounty.